How's it going? I'm Danny Colville, Colville Outfitters and Custom Tackle here in Hamburg, New York. I just did a demonstration rigging up Steelhead Stalker UV soft plastic beads, and I wanted to show you guys how I rig them up tandem style. So, as you know, if you watched my first video, we rigged up our soft plastic bead here. I didn't go over what size hook I like to run. With the 12s, I typically like to run a size 1 or a 2 hook. You can get away with smaller because these beads are squishy and there is play with them. So unlike hard plastic beads that you should be able to fit in the gap of the hook, you can go a lot smaller with these. So anyways, as far as the tandem rig goes, you know, there's a few different things you can do. You can you could also run a egg sack or a single hook on this hook right below here and just leave it just like that, or you could do the tandem style, which I'm going to go over now. So again, I'm going to use my trusty Blood Run fluorocarbon. It's the best fluorocarbon in the industry, the most abrasion resistant. You get the best bait action out of any other fluorocarbon, and it's pretty true to its breaking strength, unlike the other popular fluorocarbons on the market. I also want to tell you guys the line I also run is, again, it's Blood Run floating mono. He makes a 10 and a 15. I really like the 15 pound. It has a diameter of most 10 pound lines. It breaks truly at 15, but like I said, it's a lot thinner than your average 15 pound. So really like to stick with the same brand mono mainline as I do with fluorocarbon, so you always know your breaking strength is going to be lower on your fluoro than on your mono. What happens a lot of time with your mono is if you go with something like a Sunline, a Siglon, and you buy 8-pound Siglon, and then you buy a 6-pound Drennan. The 6-pound Drennan really breaks at 9, and you're going to break your mainline all the time, so it's a huge pain in the butt. So I like to definitely say always stick with the same brand mainline as you are fluorocarbon, and my choice is Blood Run by far. So anyway, so we got our rig here. This is our soft plastic bead. Before I get into this too, let me show you something super cool. The other reason I really like these soft plastic beads is, rather than traditional hard plastic beads, if I want to change my bead color, what I'd have to do is I'd have to cut my line, slide it off, put a new bead on, peg that bead, tie another hook on. In this fashion, all I do is I simply slide the bead right off. And by the way, these beads are very durable, and I've caught 24 fish on 2 beads, so you could pretty much just put this bead right back in the bag, save it. And if I'm going to fish murkier water, or I'm going to fish, you know, I just want to change up in color, for example, I grab my other color, or my other size for that matter. So if I want to go to a 12, to a 10, or even an 8, all I do is just simply hook the bead, slide it up through, now I have a whole different presentation color there that's going to work really good for a fresher fish or fish in dirtier water. So next I'm going to show what happens if I'm going to do a tandem rig. So a lot of times what I like to do is, if I'm running 8-pound fluorocarbon for my main fluorocarbon right below my swivel, I'll go to a 6-pound, or you know, you could just stick with the same pound you're running for a tandem rig below it. But the reason I like to go a little lighter is that if your bottom hook ends up snagging off, you're just going to break off the bottom one rather than breaking off your whole entire presentation. So what I typically will do is I'm going to start off with about, I'd say, a foot worth of fluorocarbon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a clinch knot right to the bend of my hook. So as I was describing earlier, the more twist you do, the stronger that knot is going to be. So I have 7 or 8 twists here, or 9 twists here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run 6 twists or 5 twists here with my advanced clinch knot. Always make sure you lube up your fluorocarbon. Heat is fluorocarbon's worst enemy, and when you slide your knot together, what will end up happening is it will create heat, and it will end up causing friction and fray that you won't even see until you end up breaking off that 20-pound fish that you're going to lie to your friends about. Okay, so now I got my bead, my hook, and now I got a section of fluorocarbon below that. So now there's a couple different things you can run below this. You can run an egg sac below this, which in that situation you're just going to tie another hook on and put your egg sac right below that. I'm going to do a demonstration where I'm going to rig a soft plastic minnow below that. So what I'm running here is I'm running a size 2 hook for my 12mm soft plastic bead. Like I said, I would be confident running a 4. If I'm going to run another soft plastic bead below it, or if I'm going to run an egg sac, I'll typically start anywhere from 6 all the way down to 12. If I'm going to run something like a soft plastic minnow like so, I'm going to probably go to a 1 or a 1/0. So as I talked about earlier, I really prefer the straight-eyed hook because most of the time we're going to do a knot like an advanced clinch knot, a clinch knot, or a Palomar knot, which is going to come straight off of the hook, whereas if you're using an octopus hook, that needs to be snelled. A snell or an egg loop knot has its time and its place, and I'll do a video shortly showing you why you want to use that with this whole combination, and you'll see the benefit to that in a minute. But here we have our straight-eyed hook, and I'm going to cut a little section of this fluorocarbon off because I typically want to be 6 to 8 inches behind my soft plastic bead. So again, here I'm going to do a advanced clinch knot. I'm going to run this around 6 to 7 wraps. Come through the bottom, out through the top. Lube it up real good. I got a really strong knot there. This is only 6-pound line, and I'm having a really tough time breaking this, to show you the quality of blood run. And here we have a 4-inch soft plastic bait, which is really typical for the use of the Niagara River. You know, a lot of times we'll run smaller soft plastics on the Erie Tribs to imitate a emerald shiner, but since we have tons of smelt and we have some bigger emerald shiners down the lower Niagara, I'm going to run a bigger bait. So that's why I'm going to use a size 1 hook. Now when you're rigging these soft plastics, you want to make sure that you really take your time and run it through the center of the bait as best as possible, because you don't want to have any sort of weird wobble or wiggle going on that doesn't look natural, although sometimes that might help to look like an injured bait fish, but you want to make sure it's coming right out of the back of the bait. And these are a new bait that have mylar scale inside of it, which makes it really difficult for the bait to pull off. It also makes it really difficult to hook it. But so once I got my bait hooked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this hook right through it, and I'm actually going to have the hook stick out right about like so. So now what ends up happening is we have our double tandem rig with our bead and our soft plastic minnow, and this rig is really effective for a couple different reasons. And the first reason is you have two different presentations. You have an egg and you have a soft plastic minnow. The other reason it's so effective is that, as you guys all know, anything that is going to eat an egg is a salmonoid's worst enemy, because it's competing with their young, and it's also eating their young. So what they want to do is, if they don't want to eat it, they want to kill it. So when you check your float, when you hold your float pack, what ends up happening is, you're drifting a presentation like so, and then when you check your float or stall your float, it ends up looking like this. Now it's looking like this minnow is lining up to hit this egg, and it's really going to create the steelhead or lake trout or salmon to go nuts over this. So we've had a ton of luck in the lower Niagara with this presentation. I haven't had a chance to try it out west, but I'm sure it would work really good with the right soft plastic. I've also seen a lot of guys run worms, and I've also seen a lot of guys replace the hook here that we have in this soft plastic with an actual jig head. So what ends up happening is you get a lot more of a vertical presentation like so, but it also is really effective because you have a bait in two different zones. Again, what's going to end up happening with a jig head is when you check your float, it's going to end up moving like this. So you're still going to have that look of the minnow looking at the egg and going after it. So I'll also show you real quick too, if you want to run an egg sac or something like that below this rig here. So we're going to pretend that this soft plastic bead is an egg sac. So you're going to run that there like so. So now you have an egg sac and you got a soft plastic bead. It's kind of like a bunch of different pickings there. You could also run these soft plastic beads right on the hook as well. I've seen a lot of guys do that. If it's really, really murky water, what you can do is you could actually run a soft plastic bead on the hook right below your main hook, and then you can run an egg sac there, and then it looks like a whole smorgasbord coming down for these fish, and it will work. It will actually work really well in dirty water. So that is pretty much everything I wanted to show you with the Tandem Rig. Thanks so much for following.